I do. Yeah, it's like extreme close-up at random times. That's hard. I gotta watch, take out my camera doing it. Hey, dog. Oh, okay, she blinked. She's still alive. She's still good. Still good. She went outside today by herself. Hanging out. All right. Got my list here. Before I get into the thing, again, last night the pregnant lady is no more. She popped. So my friend Samantha Molly had her first little baby girl, so congratulations. I just want to give that shout out. Now that that's out of the way, and congratulations to the grandma and grandpa and the dad and everybody, and the aunt. Aunt Ashley's going to be like Uncle Reggie. He's going to spoil the crap out of the, that'll be fun. So I look forward to that. And anyway, can't always have depressing news. Sometimes you have to talk about the good stuff, because that's the whole point of why you want to change things in the world. So, for the better, of course. But now, after all that nice happy news, let's get back to the doom porn and doom and gloom stuff. Okay, so channel update. Before I get in, I know I'm always stalling, and I just get to it. Got lots to cover. Stick around. It is going to be worth it. I do like the new format of doing this. It's a little less speculation on my behalf on some stuff, because I don't have time to jam it in there. But at least it gives you the chess pieces, how they're moving around on the board. And obviously, like, there's some of the stuff I'm going to cover in here. You're just going to say, duh, and other stuff you can say, really? Holy crap. That type of stuff. As far as the channel, quick update, yeah, the YouTube monetizing, I don't know what they're doing now with it. Most of my monetizing is there, but you can't challenge it anymore, where when it would go, so what happens is your video goes under review, and you can't even challenge it. You can't even click the box. And I don't know if it's a computer error on my end, or if anybody else is experiencing this. But we do know that depending on what happens in the Congress in the United States, whether Obama is going to be able to hand the internet over to the United Nations, which gives it right to China, Turkey, Russia, and all kinds of, Saudi Arabia. These people are going to be able to say, oh no, you can't put that out there because that offends us. Once we get to that point, I don't know what's going to happen. That might be the end of the channel. I don't think they're going to do it overnight. I think they're just going to randomly just start taking down channels and not let channels start up, that type of thing. But till that time, I'm going to ride it out. We'll see where we go. Yeah, it is what it is. Doing more World War III videos kind of offsets the demonetization a bit too. So I guess it's a win-win, where it helps me to maintain a bit. So, if I can stay ahead of it at that, the good news is you'll probably get a lot more World War III updates. So that said, we're 3 minutes in, and I know some of you guys have a short attention span, so let's get into this. All right, so we already know about Putin and Erdogan having discussions at the G20 meeting. Nothing is as it appears, because every time you hear about this meeting or that meeting, one side says, oh no, everything went fantastic. The other side says, oh, we didn't negotiate shit. You know what I mean? That type of thing, right? But right now there's a lot of slag on British intervention in Libya and how it's really destroyed Libya. Libya is basically, right now I think their foreign main oil ports are in the hands of the puppet government, which they could pull a fast one. This is why I think there's such, everybody's panties are in a bunch to try to get into Libya right now, because the Libyans could do this. I mean, it's a guaranteed war, but it's not so much that it's a guaranteed war. That's a given, because they're already at war. But it's the idea that they'll start sending U.S. treasuries back home, meaning current U.S. currency, and hyperinflation. If you haven't seen what's going on in Venezuela right now, $150 for a loaf of bread. I remember when I was a kid saying, why was a loaf of bread 10,000 pesos in Mexico? Now, apparently the economy's improved. A lot of people from Mexico have told me, what are you talking about? It's like 250. You know what I mean? Things have improved. But Venezuela is pretty much where Mexico was when I was a kid. Keep in mind, Mexico had a stable currency for 300 years until the Rothschild banking system got in there. So what does that tell you, right? Yeah. Simon Perez. I'm going to throw this one in there. This guy, I think, was a part of the Balfour Declaration and one of the founders of Israel. He's in a coma at age 94. So this is one of the core Zionists here. I don't know a lot about. I know of him. I don't know a lot about him. But basically, this is one of the guys after World War II, I believe, that got in 1948 Israel as a state. So he's one of them. So he would obviously be working with the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and all that. But apparently this man, what they call the New World Order is really an old world order. Somebody pointed it out, and I think, yeah, that makes more sense because they're all old, they're great. Like David Rockefeller, the guy's like 99, 100 years old, and he's on his deathbed constantly. I mean, these people are going to kick off soon. And that could also make, I mean, we see it with Hillary Clinton, how crazy she is. I got to do this before I die, you know what I mean? And they'll take everybody with them. It creates what I call the Moby Dick syndrome, where they're going to go down with the great white whale. You know what I mean? They're going to harpoon that thing and they're going to take but the problem is they take the dory with it and all the other people that are on the dory, right? So think of the economy like that, going after the great white whale, the Greater Israel Project. I mean, a lot of people don't understand. Everything we're seeing now was planned years and years and years ago. I bet you day one of the League of Nations, Maurice Strauss, he kicked off. He was a part of it with the Rockefellers, and then it went into the United Nations. And probably from day one, everything they planned probably back then is what we're seeing now. Because they can't just roll it out that fast. People just revolt. And people are revolting. Obviously, in Libya, like again, some people are legitimate jihadists. There's no doubt about that. There's people that have ideology differences than the West. I'm not saying there is no terrorists. But a lot of these people, too, could be what you would call opposition. Again, in these countries, opposition is usually shot at, not debated with, right? So these are people who want their country back. Hence, they're seizing the oil ports and stuff like that. Now, obviously, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, so Boko Haram, ISIS, etc., etc. But more and more people are catching on to the idea that ISIS is really an Israeli-U.S. creation. It's a Western creation as a proxy army to overthrow Assad, made up of willing participants of jihadists. But if you really look at where the bombings take place and all that, it's more, like I say, it's the biggest cattle rustling event we've seen in history. The idea is to keep the jihadis fighting and corral them back into Syria so they keep fighting to overthrow Assad, which is really, at the end of the day, is a war against Russia and China because Russia and China are invested in there, right? So, and I go over this and I go over this. But anyway, that's just something to know. I can imagine it's probably going to be the same here, but right now, the radiation counts across the United States in some places are like a 348 clicks per minute or whatever. Anything over 50 is considered high. This is radiation from the Fukushima plant. So again, like we've talked about before, radiation is bioaccumulative. It has long-lasting effects. It does break down over time, but not in our lifetime. Maybe in we're talking. How many generations are we talking here? 100 generations, or whatever. 1,000 generations. Is it 1,000 generations before 25,000 years? Obamacare. You might as well call it Obamacare. Common Core, Obamacare, all stuff. 17 out of the 23 co-ops have failed, meaning, hello, U.S. taxpayer, you're going to have to bail that out again. The U.S. also is the guy over there in the Philippines. I keep forgetting his name there. I got it written down here somewhere. But this guy, he's a bit of a wild card. Colorful character. He's definitely a love him or hate him character. He's calling Obama all kinds of names. Even Obama, when they asked him at a press conference, Obama's like, well, he's a colorful guy. He was with very colorful remarks. I've heard, like he doesn't even know how to respond to them. Like this guy's calling him an asshole. He's calling him a whore. He's calling him everything. You can't even make this up. That said, this guy, he's killed I mean right now this guy's obviously going to be a dictator. There's no doubt about that. People like him now because he's killing the drug cartels and stuff like that. But this is the type of guy that's going to kill his political opponents very shortly. Which way is the wind blowing in the Philippines? I don't think Philippines is really blowing into a neutral zone. I think they're blowing towards China. But even at that, he's got stiff language for China. Asians hate Asians. I don't know why that is. Call me racist, bigot, but it's just something I've picked up. I've had Chinese friends, I've had Japanese friends, and trust me, they'll get along with each other in their face, but they hate the people. Chinese people hate Japanese people hate Chinese people. Filipinos don't like either, and they don't like them. The Malaysians are the only ones that seem to want to play well with it, just because they don't want to get caught in the crossfire, but they don't actually like anybody else. And the Taiwanese, well, they don't like the Chinese, even, and the North Koreans don't like the South Koreans. And the Vietnam, don't even get me started on that. They all hate each other. They hate each other with a passion. It's comedy and tragedy at the same time. So yeah, we know about the Libyan oil. This is why the Americans and the British are talking about invading to get control of the government there, because the government there has lost control, and putting troops on the ground. Which, again, Obama, the peace president, is out there. They're not telling you why, but John Kerry. Remember, John Kerry slips from time to time. Well, I think does it on purpose. When he said, if we don't take Syria and I think he made a reference to Libya as well, that the petrodollar is going to fail. Well, that's what it's really about. Maybe he's not supposed to tell you that, but he's right, because it's the domino effect. Libya starts selling its oil outside, and it'll work very well because people will see how quickly Libya will prosper from selling in its own currency rather than a Rothschild IMF Federal Reserve currency. That's why you have to take the country out. Take out the oil ports, take out this, take out that. And there's a catch-22 here. What the Libyans do, well, you take out our oil ports, I'm speculating on this, but I think this is what they're going to do, is, okay, the U.S., they've got monopoly of firepower, there's no doubt about that. They'll come in, completely destroy the country. But the government is still not in the hands of the people they favor. Therefore, they could switch the currency. That's it. That's it. They'll do that. It'll gain sovereignty for Libya. It'll start to prosper again, like it was under Muammar Gaddafi. Yes, Muammar Gaddafi was a dictator and a horrible man, but when you understand the concept of the Middle East, you understand you have to run it with an iron fist. It's just the way it is there. If you don't, like Muammar Gaddafi said, the Middle East will burn if you take them out of there. Same thing that happened to Saddam. These guys, as bad as they were, even you could make the case for Kim Jong-un. The guy is a complete nutjob. Should he be out of there? Yeah, but who's going to replace him? That's the key. The new boss could be worse than the old boss. And what we see in Libya is exactly that. So the Libyans are looking to push that domino over of sending back the petrodollar. We're just not going to use it. The people won't use it. They'll just reject it. And I think that's what's kind of going on throughout South America, Africa. This, again, wherever the Chinese build bridges, the United States blow them up. And you could look in Africa. Everywhere China is invested, again, that's where Boko Haram is. It's to keep the resources on the petrodollar. The petrodollar, it's not even so much the golden rule. Ye who has the gold rules. That's part of it. It's to make sure that every resource is sold in the U.S. petrodollar. But you have to understand, it's not just the U.S. that goes down because the euro is tied to it. Everything is tied to the petrodollar. It all falls. People are trying to break away from the petrodollar. But it's such a mountain climber effect. One falls, they all fall. But it just takes somebody to get that first open domino going, saying, no, we reject the U.S. currency. Here's your U.S. treasuries back. Now, Saudi Arabia is also talking about this too. However, Saudi Arabia, I think they're getting thrown under the bus slowly. I think the United States is trying to blackmail Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is trying to blackmail the U.S. It's kind of catch-22. It's a Mexican standoff at this point. One has a barrel over the other. You shoot me, I shoot you. It's like, that's pretty much what's going on with Saudi Arabia. That said, if because obviously the Syrians aren't going to use the petrodollar, the Israelis are sending ground troops to the Golan Heights over the drone plane shot down, the one that they keep denying, but it looks like it was an S-200 missile system, a Syrian S-200 missile system that did shoot down a drone, I can't remember the name of the area, and shot down the jet. I don't know what jet. I heard F-16. I don't know if that's true. There's footage out there, but I don't know if it's... You got to watch out for some of these footage, because the footage could be like 20 years old. And, oh, no, that was the jet getting shot down. So it's really hard to verify whether something got shot down, but it is looking like it, because you have to understand, why is Israel flying around in somebody else's country? They don't need to be doing that. And bombing, and who are they bombing? They're not bombing ISIS. Israel has not bombed ISIS, I don't even think, once. They shoot when it's at the border, at the Golan, which is technically still Syrian sovereign territory. It's a disputed territory, kind of like what's going on with Japan in the South Pacific, or China in the South Pacific, southern Chinese Ocean. It's disputed, but technically, under the United Nations, it's still recognized as Syrian territory. The Golan Heights is still recognized. Obviously, the Israelis are not going to give up the Golan Heights. It's their last kind of defendable position, right? Well, kind of. It used to be. Maybe against tanks, yes. Cruise missiles, well, they'll go straight over the Golan. They won't even... the Golan Heights is a pretty rocky terrain, that type of stuff, but they shoot at the Syrians. They don't shoot at the Syrian army. They don't shoot at the rebels. The Israelis are treating the rebels... They don't call them ISIS when they come across the border. They call them moderate rebels, which, again, right now they're in the name change. They're no longer called ISIS or whatever. They're called something else. The Arab Democracy Army or something. It's something really stupid like that. But anyway, yeah, so... The Israelis, again, I think the plans for them to do, this is why they've dialed down the rhetoric a lot. They'll probably go up again. They've been doing it for over 35, 40 years of striking Iran, because Iran's going to have a nuke in the next 10 minutes. But they've been saying that for like over 40 years. And the thing about that is that it really, the S-200 missile system is still formidable, obviously, if it's shooting down our Israeli jets. The Israelis, yes, standard-wise, most people around the world adopt Israeli tactics because their manuals are written in blood. They are good soldiers. They are excellent pilots. They're excellent Navy. Excellent. Their agents obviously are good at getting the conflict going or whatever. So the Israelis, military-wise, are really good. But it's a small country with not a lot of resources. I think there's another $38 billion going to the Israeli from the Congress deciding on that. So the United States, again, without the United States, there is no Israel, right? That type of thing. So again, why would you be giving $38 billion to the, especially the Americans? They're broke, to the Israelis, that type of thing. Russian troops in Aleppo. Yeah, so just back one last thing. So Israel right now, there's no way they can strike Iran because if they can't get by the S-200 missile system, they're not going to get by the S-300 missile systems that are in Iran, which could probably cover to Israel just about. They've got a 300-400 mile range on some of those missiles, so they could cover into Israel. So they'd shoot down the airplanes long before they could even get through Syria. So there are Russian troops in Aleppo and Hama. Hama. Sorry, I don't know why I put Alma there, but Hama. So they're in there, and I don't know if they're advisors or if they're actually a fighting force, but they're there. I think they're kind of still training up the Syrians. I mean, the Russians have already opened, and I said they would do this anyway. About 6 to 8 months before, as soon as Russia got in there, I said, yeah, they're going to take a shitload of Syrian Arab army troops and Hezbollah troops and train them up. So now you have Spetsnaz, basically an army of Spetsnaz. So it takes about 6 months to make a good, a trainable soldier. Mind you, these guys are kind of in battle while they're learning, so the forward observers and stuff like that. I don't know how many troops exactly Russia has in these areas. But this is to coincide with this so-called ceasefire, which has already been broken by the rebels, of course. And the Americans are telling the Syrians, you can't now, the Russians and them have agreed that they can't bomb, the Syrians can't bomb al-Nusra. They can't bomb the moderate rebels. They can only bomb who they say. And the Russians have come out and said, no, we didn't agree on that. Again, John Kerry comes out after these meetings, because, again, you have to understand, what gets said in the meeting isn't what actually happens. You only get to see what CNN and NBC and all of them show you. And they're showing you that, no, they came to an agreement. But the Russians are like, no, we didn't come to an agreement. We'll have the ceasefire, we'll discuss it. You tell us who the moderate rebels are, we won't hit them. But if they're intertwined with the bad guys, they got to stay away from them. And this is, and again, how can we tell the Syrians who they can and cannot bomb in their own country? It's a sovereign country. Again, this is an illegal war. There is no... Libya is an illegal war. There is no, congressional approval for this war. There is no United Nations global world stage approval for Libya or Syria. So in other words, Obama, Clinton, that whole Bush, these are illegal wars. These are illegal wars. These people are definitely war crimes, ceasefire, so the ceasefire, I think, is the U.S. going to use that time to rearm the rebels. And that's probably why the Russians are moving in, so they'll know where to hit right away for ISIS. So again, ISIS is no longer called ISIS, it's called something else. Yeah. Now, Christine Lagarde from the IMF, the Rothschild-owned IMF, which also owns the Federal Reserve, well, the Rothschilds pretty much own everything, is out there, and this lady, she's kind of the spokesperson for the IMF, and she's out there talking about the wage gap and stuff like that, but also talking about people are in revolt right now, and they are, because not everybody knows who's behind the system pulling the strings to make your life shitty, but people are starting to figure it out. It's the bankers. So once again, these people they're running scared, they're terrified. The war games that Kavak's 2006, Kavak, it's Russian here, K-A-V-K-A-Z, Kavak's, however they pronounce it, 2016, was a war game done in the Crimea. This remember, again, don't be afraid to watch some of my older World War III updates because it explains some of them. We had Turkish warships going to the area, British warships onto the way, off of, all that. But if you've seen the war game, it was a 12,500 man war game plus ships, plus, I can imagine they were testing the Ratnik system for the Russians. They were testing everything, air, land, sea, you name it, missile systems, ice scanners, non-nuclear, but there were basically all their tactical stuff they were doing. Navy, everything from the Caspian Sea. This was a huge, huge drill, which the rhetoric of, the Russians are getting ready to invade, from the Ukraine, that coming up. This is what it was in response to. But again, Russia's doing this in response to all the NATO drills right on the border, bordering up to Crimea. So, and they're getting bigger. They're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. World record-breaking military drills. Now, the thing about this, too, is that if you watch these drills, and again, anybody that has a doubt that Russia is going to be a formidable, there's people out there that believe that NATO and the United States are just going to run through Russia like that. Again, you watch the bombing. I mean, some of the Russian stuff is going to be predictable and stuff like that. And some of the older stuff is going to be taken out very easily. But it's the numbers. The numbers is one problem. The second is that their newer stuff is actually pretty good. It's good enough to get the job done. I would say that the war would be short with Russia because it would go nuclear pretty much within. If it didn't go nuclear right away, I mean, it might not even be a war. It might just be, we're being invaded, launch. It could get to that. Because Russia will not let Russia fall to the West. They will not let it fall to the West. They will not let it fall to NATO. Moscow, Napoleon Moscow syndrome takes it. If we can't have Moscow, we'll burn it down, rather than let them get it. So but these war games are huge. They're massive. And of course, it's pretty much every branch of the Russian armed forces on it. So if you watch the footage from it, they have it on RT and stuff like that. You get to see that, the firepower that they have is pretty impressive. Their guys aren't hacks. They are well trained. Again, one thing about the Syrian conflict is it really does show, how well coordinated the Russians actually are. I'm not saying they're better than any other military, but it's like World War II. No real military was, the only reason why the Germans lost was because there were 16 nations against it. It got outnumbered at one point. It couldn't keep up to the resources. But, I mean, if the war would have started in 1945 or 46 with all the advancements that Germany made, going into war with jets and stuff like that, they probably still would have lost the war, but the war would have been 8 years long. But now we've got long-range strategic bombers with cruise missiles and all that. I think warships, one thing is there'll be nothing in the oceans once the war starts, because the cruise missiles will take out every warship you can. Then there will be no supply routes coming back to Europe. Whatever's there will have to fight. And the thing is if they take out, that's what the ice scanners are for, is to take out the supply ships from shore. And then of course you've got submarines, you've got aircraft, you've got all that. But all that stuff, that's coastal defense. It will work. I mean, ice scanners can take out, you're firing a missile at a missile system. These missile systems, the Russians have missiles on wheels. The Americans don't, and NATO doesn't have missiles on, they're not mobile. They set up their THAAD system. They can move it, but they can't shoot on the move. That's where a lot of the Russians have a lot of advantages with their missiles, is they can shoot and move very quickly or shoot on the move. It really is just missiles are really just a longer version of artillery, that type of thing. So when you're looking at it like that, it's really clear that, this would be, if it stayed conventional, I think all the high-tech stuff is gone in the first week, the satellites, you're back to a World War II type of stuff. And I think the Russian Ratnik system might have a bit of an advantage over the American system and the NATO system because it can work analog, a lot better. There will be no more AWACS. It'll be just like World War II, and it'll draw out. It will not be this quick 1 week war like World War I was supposed to be. That turned into 4 years. And that's with that technology. 6 years or 5 years, 6 years for World War II was supposed to last 3 months, 4 months, 6 months tops. Yeah. But anyway, that war game is definitely something impressive. It gets the world's attention. But you have to understand, the Russians wouldn't be doing that had George Soros and Victoria Nuland, for the IMF, Rothschild, Rockefeller, Obamas and Clintons and Bushes, if they had not overthrown the government in Ukraine, again, Poroshenko probably would have won the election, and had they not overthrown the government in Ukraine, guaranteed there would be no more. There wouldn't be an East Ukraine, West Ukraine. There wouldn't. Poroshenko probably would have had the majority vote across the country at the time. Almost guaranteed that. But he can't deliver, obviously. So the goal was never to give the Ukrainian people a fair chance. It was to, basically it's a war against. It was to lure Russia into Eastern Europe to start a war. That's one thing. The other thing was to build the missile systems. Right. Bashar al-Assad and the Syrian army are not accepting any aid from Turkey. Unless it comes in on UN convoys or whatever, they have to inspect it. Because the Turkish aid is just basically arming ISIS and arming ISIS and arming ISIS. The other thing they've also said is that, and I mean, Turkey is a NATO country, so is Israel. If Syria, okay, and I thought about this, why would the Israelis deny that one of their jets got shot down? Well, it's simple. If Syria just shot down a NATO jet, Article 5, what happens if Article 5 kicks in? Well, who's helping out? Again, we have to look at the chess pieces here. Who's helping out the Syrians? You've got Hezbollah, the Lebanese Communist Army, that faction, which is also you might as well say Hezbollah, Hezbollah as well. You've got the Iranians and the Russians, and of course the Chinese. So if NATO responds and Israel says, oh, we have to invoke Article 5 for Syria, guess who's going to be launching rockets at Iran? Because they know that if NATO goes into Syria in full capacity, yes, they'll take Syria. Iran will have no choice but to launch on Israel. It'll be the end of Iran, sure, but it'll also be the end of Israel. So the Israelis, again, they understand the actions of consequences of actions. That's why the Israelis fight a very defensive war. They don't fight an aggressive war. They can't. They can fight it. They can do airstrikes in other people's nations from time to time because they got the ability to do that. But now they don't because if Israel's already been chased away by Russian fighters several times flying into Syrian territory. So yeah, there's definitely a reason for the Israelis not to do this. But the Assad and the Syrian Arab Army has told Turkey, if your guys attack our guys, we are going to shoot down Turkish jets. That is a NATO country. Now, the problem with Turkey is they are crazy. They could get us into the war if they start shooting down, even though it's a sovereign. Turkey has no reason to be flying. Nobody has a reason other than the people invited in. Look, if we were actually working with the Russians to take out the ISIS guys, then yeah, okay, everybody be in there and they'd be working for the Assad government. But the goal is not, this wouldn't be happening had the United States not armed the rebels in 2010. Right? Again, Syria is burning because of U.S. foreign policy, death and debt-based economy. Take our currency, or we're going to give you democracy JDAMs. Has nothing to do with dictators, and there's so many dictators around the world. They only pay attention to them if it's going to hurt resources, right? That type of thing. So, yeah. The Zunwald shows up on radar like a fishing boat. This is one of the U.S.'s new, which this thing's had a lot of problems too, but it's the USS Zunwald. And it's basically like a stealth warship. Shows up on radar like a little fishing boat. That's how stealthy it is. And this is kind of neat. They're starting to unveil this thing now. It's been under sea trials for God knows how long. Like everything, it's a make-work project, and I think they had to take it back a few times because there was a reaction between the composites, and it started to corrode the ship at the back, like big time. So they had to redo that. But anyway, they call it because it's so advanced, they call it the USS Enterprise, which there is a USS Enterprise, and I'm not talking the Star Trek one, but they're the aircraft carrier, which I believe is decommissioned now, is a World War II one, and it's been decommissioned, I believe, about a decade ago or whatever. I can't remember when. I remember it being decommissioned, but unless they recommissioned it, I don't know. If you know for sure, just let me know. But anyway, they call this thing the USS Enterprise, and incidentally enough, the name of the captain of this vessel, James Kirk. I don't know if it's James T. Kirk, but it's James Kirk. So there you go. The U.S.'s most advanced warship is basically captained by James Kirk. There you go. But that thing's making its debut, so we'll see. I have to keep an eye on that too. There's also saying that China is pretty much air power technology is their fighter jets are almost as good as U.S. jets. And I can believe that their J-15 or whatever, that thing's pretty darn maneuverable. It'll turn as fast as any F-16. It is a single engine, whatever, kind of a delta wing, little flying, with forward canards. They are impressive little machines, for sure. Can't remember how many fighters they have, but the thing is even though the Chinese don't have many fighters, it's they're going to be fighting with the home base advantage, that type of thing. Their J-10s, which is like an Su-27 knockoff, is pretty good, and of course they're going to be building, or have already started building, is Su-30s. They have a few versions of that, so they're starting to get really good stuff. Their bomber fleet is still pretty archaic, but it'll get the job done. Bombers aren't going to be things of great maneuverability anyway. You don't really need a really fantastic airframe for a bomber. You just need something to lift a lot of weight and drop bombs. And then, good guidance system and good radar jamming. And you can go from there. And their bombers are good enough to get the job done. They're basically a knockoff of an old, Badger bomber or Bison bomber. And the thing about the Chinese, too, is they're also going to be building a fleet of AN-225s. Some of it's going to be built in I guess because it's already tooled up in the Ukraine, so they're probably going to buy them from the Ukraine. They'll probably buy one or two and then reverse engineer it like they did with the Su-27. They took a couple on loan from the Russians, and the Russians were trying to sell them the Su-27. They took it apart, reverse engineered it, and made their own. The Russians are still pissed about that. Like, we were supposed to buy them from us, not reverse engineered. But anyway, yeah, so China's air power, again, it's an 8-year war minimum with China if we get into a war and if it doesn't go nuclear. But Chinese, again, same doctrine. If we're losing, Beijing will launch. Their government has made that very clear. Now, our favorite friend, George Soros, says, accept refugees or face extinction. Him and Barbara Lerner Specter, what the hell are they talking about with this multiculturalism and if you don't do that, you're going to face extinction? Explain yourself. Like, maybe he's, like, if you know something we don't, just tell us. But I think, like anything, he's like why would Europe go extinct if it stayed homogeneous? Why would Europe go extinct if it didn't accept hordes of millions of refugees coming in? It's going to go extinct if it does do that. It's going to become part of the new Ottoman Empire. So I don't know. George Soros he's a special case. That guy will never die. He's going to live forever because he's so freaking horrible. Evil always lives forever. What's it called? The DNC is working on the Hillary Clinton replacement backup plan. So that tells you her health is not good. I won't go too much into the health on that. I think there's enough news sources out there. But the gist of it is when she collapsed out on the 9/11 thing, she went to see her daughter, but apparently it was at a clinic for kinds of things like all the things everybody's suspecting, dementia, and Alzheimer's and cancer. It's a clinic for that kind of stuff. So it just happened. No, I was just going to see my daughter, but she just happened to conveniently be at. Yeah. So again, I'm still saying she's going to win the election. It's her turn to win. It's the same. The reason why, and some people don't but Donald Trump is so far ahead. We know the polls are fake. We know Donald Trump is far ahead. You're right. I know that. But it's the same reason why the economy hasn't collapsed yet. It's propped up. That's why I keep saying Hillary Clinton will win. Not that I want her to win, but she's gonna win. Saudi Arabia to be sued by the 9/11 families, and Saudi Arabia's response is if they go ahead with allowing the families to sue them, they're going to send U.S. Treasuries back, sell off U.S. Treasuries. And Saudi Arabia has done this a couple of times this year already, threatening to basically, if you basically finger us in 9/11, or if you make life rough, we're going to dump all your treasuries. That's about the only real card that Saudi Arabia has. And that would start a chain reaction and crash the global economy. It's so fragile now, that's kind of where it is. So, the Saudis, they are being thrown under the bus, but again, it's a Mexican standoff. They got to barrel over each other because you can't throw the Saudis under the bus without taking yourself out, the catch-22, right? Philippines doesn't want F-16s to fight drug wars. So the United States, again, trying to bring in missile systems to the Philippines, bringing in, they want to bring in F-16s. And again, the leader there, he's like, it's like, we don't want that. We're not going to use F-16s to fight drug wars. That type of. They don't want that kind of aid. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with the Philippines. They will probably start a color revolution to get rid of this guy. He's too hostile to the United States. And I'm not saying he's pro-China, but the second he goes pro-China, you're going to see democracy JDAMs dropped in the Philippines. There's no doubt about that. Venezuela, inflation, 720%. Eggs, $150. People in Venezuela right now, you got to feel for them. That's what an economic collapse is going to look like. However, it's going to be worse in the States for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Venezuelans, their deficit isn't $20 trillion. Yeah. So that's again, I still stick with my guns. No economic collapse till worse comes. Because again, if it hasn't collapsed right now, they're just going to keep propping it up until war comes, or till the pitchfork revolution. It's one or the other, and nobody knows when that is. Yeah. So U.S. and Russia are not agreed on Syria. And Syria is not allowed to bomb al-Nusra, because al-Nusra is now considered a branch of this moderate rebels. Al-Nusra, the spin-off of Al-Qaeda that turned into ISIS. And al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda don't get along. They're both, do I have to explain it? I don't even have to explain it. This one's good. Hillary Clinton, was like a doctor, a physician, a very pro-Hillary physician, is blaming Donald Trump and Putin for poisoning Hillary Clinton. But I would say, I wouldn't be doubt if she is being poisoned. She said she should be tested because, she might be being poisoned. Donald Trump is not going to poison anybody. Putin is not going to have a leader that prominent poison. The Russians do that from time to time, sure, but no, they're not that crazy. Because they would, it's not rather people would do it officially. Or figure it out officially. It's the unofficial spy vs. spy thing. They know what riffs to make and what riffs not to make. The Russians aren't that stupid. That type of thing. But that said, again, we know Hillary Clinton is the linchpin for the New World Order. Right now you have like 70 people in front of Congress with the FBI and I guess the CIA and all that stuff. And the Congress is really giving, I don't know if they're going to be able to do much, but you have 70 people that are basically went to bat for Hillary Clinton. This is what I mean by the first wave hellhounds. You're starting to see it. People are now being held accountable. So a lot of people are going to roll. Say, oh, no, I did it because my superior told me to do this. And again, accountability. So they're going to start frying these people. And once they start singing like canaries, I mean, it's amazing how many people are going to get taken down. So again, Hillary Clinton wins the election. They kill her shortly after. They put in their replacement, whoever it's going to be. It won't matter because they got the election. If she dies before the election, they cancel the election, which I think she would die. If they had to go that route, I don't think they could win the election with a new candidate at this point. It just would be so unbelievable for somebody to take out Donald Trump at that range of the election within a week or two. And now if she does die before that, they have to cancel the election and postpone it, and then keep creating a reason to keep postponing. Obama will get his third term, whether he wants it or not. He could step down and hand it over to whoever just to make things look good. It doesn't really matter, because it doesn't matter if you have Hillary Clinton or Obama in power. They're the same people. They advocate for the same things. And no, none of it's good. U.S. is using a Stratcom nuke force test. They did an SLBM, submarine launched Trident II, from an Ohio-class sub, and an ICBM. I don't know where they did the ICBM test. And they're testing the nuclear forces. This comes after North Korea's little test. They're testing them to see what their state of deterrent is, their state of readiness is, and the conclusion they come up with. And again, this is why Obama's approved $3 trillion or $3 trillion to upgrade yeah, with a T, to upgrade the U.S. nuclear arsenal. It's in shambles. It's old. I mean, Trident IIs, Trident IIIs, Trident I, whatever. The Minuteman 1, 2s, and 3s. These things are old, and none of them are mobile. They're all silo-based. So they're going to be upgrading their nuclear weapons. So far, they've upgraded the B-12, B-61, the B-61 aircraft deliverable variable yield nuke is the 12-1 model, or I forget what that's their latest upgrade. But everything else is being tested. But they're saying they're inadequate. Their missiles are inadequate now. The Russians can counter these missiles. Again, like anything, if you launch everything, birds are going to get through on both sides. So rather than using some of that money to de-escalate, yeah. Anyway, so that's going. This comes from the UK. I forget which news organization, but basically this is a leftist organization too, which the UK most of them are. It's like here in Canada. We're the closest to World War III in 60 years. Okay, when was the atom bomb detonated? When did Oppenheimer become the destroyer of worlds? Right, about 60 years ago, a little more. Right, so it means that we're in a tighter time now than during the Cold War. And also, the Brits are out there saying they're not ready for a World War III with Russia either. They can't take it on. I'll finish up with the Russian-Chinese largest Navy drill they've done in history, the one they've done in the South China Sea recently. Again, very impressive. Again, world records being broken for military drills. They get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, it's been a long time since they've done a Russia-China drill, but in that area of the world, I believe it was the last time they did that. That was the incident of the Kursk back in 94, 96, whenever that happened. And these big drills are just the possibility of not a false flag, but a black swan. One warship gets the wrong signal and takes out the other. A fighter jet shoots down another fighter jet, whatever it is. Somebody gets nervous with a trigger finger. You know what I mean? Nervous on the trigger finger. That is, I think, what we really have to worry about, because, and I still have people on my channel that, oh, this is entertainment for them. They'll never do it. They're not that crazy. Which they might be right. If you're factoring logical people, we're not factoring logical people. Listen to what these people talk about. These people are insane. Insane in the brain. McCain, Obama's insane. Clinton's insane, talking about going to war with Russia and China over cyber attacks. And again, these cyber attacks, the fact that they know who did it right away, well, then how come they're still spamming? If they can find hackers that quickly, again, if the Russians are hacking, they're not going to make it. They're not going to hack from Russia. They're going to hack from somewhere else. So I don't think I think they're looking for any excuse. Right now, Hillary Clinton blames everything on Putin and Russia. The anti-Russian rhetoric is, I'm not saying Putin is a saint. I know he's not a saint. Again, but that's for the Russian people to deal with. If they love him, great. If they don't love him, it's up to them to get him out of power. We got to fight. We got the dog in the fight on this side of the pond. They got the dog in the fight on that side of the pond. I get it. Putin's approval in the States is probably higher than Obama's. I get that. But if you really understand that there are no good guys, and I say it all the time because it's a default. If you hate Hillary Clinton, you have to be pro-Trump. If you hate Trump, you have to be pro-Hillary Clinton. If you're anti-West, you have to be pro-East. That type of thing. But you have to look at it as the world is, and I always repeat this so people understand it, that the world is broken into two empires: the transatlantic Anglo-American petrodollar empire versus the Eurasian Pacific, China, BRIC nations, Russia, Iran, India, Asian Pacific empire. And these empires are fighting. We're just a little people in between. And when the two tribes go to war, it's going to be pretty bad. And the problem right now is most people are not aware of what's going on in the world. Now, as far as independent media is going to go, that might be coming to an end sooner than not. Again, it won't happen overnight, but incrementally, we can see the censorship. We can see that. Again, how long is my channel going to last? I don't know. These things are very fragile. And it's getting to the point where even if you start up your own website, once Obama hands the internet over to the United Nations, again, every dictator in the world, what they're saying is offending us, so they ban it in our country. Now, they have to do this to pass the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. That's the whole key. That's what, again, it's all one system. The Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership is the United Nations. The United Nations is the military system. NATO is the education system. The education is the political system. The banking system is it all. And again, if you want a one world currency by 2018, like the Rothschild Economist magazine put out back in 1989, you have to destroy everybody else's currencies. The best way to do that is with a war. But the problem is, if you start the war, and the same with the bankers are creating the conditions for war, you're going to have a pitchfork revolution if the people catch on to it and figure it out. That's why independent media is actually done. Again, we're small because we don't have the guns, so to speak, but we're big in the advent of ideas. And the problem is the mainstream media just cannot counter they're on the defensive now. It's something I've talked about years ago when you've got your tinfoil hat guy over here going blah, 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 and the mainstream media is like there's this guy's crazy, don't listen to him. It's all conspiracy theory. And then, okay, they're right, but they're still, that's just because they're racist, bigot, homophobe, xenophobe, all that stuff. And they have no legit, they're just don't pay any money. And then, well, okay, yeah, they're right. And then it's, oh, right, oh my God, they were right. What do we do now? And you see time and time again, Hillary Clinton doesn't have health issues. No, it's just, racist, misogynistic, right-wing, alt-right, they don't even know what alt-right is, but Milo Yiannopoulos is not alt-right. Nice try, Milo, you're not alt-right. He sides with a lot of stuff, but he's not alt-right. But they don't know how to counter it. So you saw Hillary Clinton go after Pepe the Frog. You saw her go, the Pepe the Frog meeting, I still don't quite get what that is either, but it's like, when you're attacking your opponent's cartoon memes, and again, you can see like the Hillary Clinton thing, that half-hour speech that the CBC, promoted yesterday from making this video. Like again, her attacks on Putin, her attacks on the alt-right, when a politician comes out, you can call your opponent deplorable, but you cannot call the electorate deplorable, whether they're for you or against you, even if they're calling you names. Why? Because it is just such, in politics, calling the electorate deplorable is bad for business. And I don't think there's anybody out there that really is going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Yes, there's going to your brainwashed feminists and your multiculturalists and your extreme left-wing Trotskyite, cultural Marxist, communist-minded people that believe in the we think and we believe. But the people that think, whether they're left-wing or right-wing, will not side with Hillary Clinton, which means they're not siding with the Goldman Sachs, the J.P. Morgans, the IMF, the Federal Reserve. They're not going up. It's just not believable. She's just not believable. And no matter how much you try to play the populist, she can't play the populism like Trump can. And Trump can't even play the populism like Putin can. Putin is a master of propaganda. There's no doubt about that. And he knows when to throw the people a bone. I'm going to take this from the people, but I'm going to throw them this, and they'll be distracted on this. Trump is a good distraction on a lot of things, but with Trump, for Trump, he's not going to win because it's not his turn to win. He's not allowed to win. He's too dangerous to the establishment. When you have 70 people that won't even show up in front of Congress when they're ordered to, they had to order, give subpoenas for these people to show up because they didn't feel like it. That's the governments we have right now. People are not accountable in the government. They think their job can, wherever they work, doesn't matter if they're working in the FBI or the Department of Education or the Department of Health, that they're not accountable. But they are, and this is something that we need to show the private sector needs to show the public sector. You work for us. You can lose your job. Your union isn't that strong. You can go to jail if you break the law. Again, when you have FBI agents or whatever directors out there saying, well, yes, the investigation for Hillary Clinton was a little bit, we treated it a little bit different. And the guy in the Congress, I can't remember what his name is, he's sitting there saying, aren't we supposed to all be equal? Justice is supposed to be blind. Aren't we supposed to all be equal in the law? So that just shows you how libertine the society has got. And then, again, the irony of Hillary Clinton coming out there, after all the things she's done, again, this woman has got more than enough rope to hang herself, all the things she's done, she says something as bold as, I want to be held accountable for my actions. But you clearly are not. And the mainstream media going, excuse that, it's so obvious now that it's really like the emperor has no clothes. So they have to get a war started or the bankers are going to die. They're going to die in the pitchfork revolution. Yes, most of the people will turn on each other. Yes, the George Soros flooding of refugees is a distraction to get a civil war going between, the Europeans and the migrants. Sure, that's going to happen. Yes, there was a big bar brawl in Europe between Germans and migrants the other day. Yes, that's coming. I'm still predicting the 10th Crusade, the big battle. I'm not saying the first battle, but the big battle where there's going to be bodies. 20,000 on 20,000. It might be that small. Maybe I'm predicting probably bigger than that, but I'll stay conservative that 20,000 Brits are going to start killing in a crusade type battle, just like you see during either the 100 Years' War or the Third Crusade. Picture that in the streets of London. It's going to happen. Why? Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen, but it will happen because it's being orchestrated. You can see the stepping stones to it. It's no longer about, oh, well, you're just a xenophobe, a homophobe, a racist, and bigot, and a misogynist. Names aren't working. You can call me those names, fine, to make your argument. I just have to point out the body count to make mine. You know what I mean? So where do you think reality is going to lie? And people are waking up to the reality that the world elites are insane. You got people opening up the borders, people dropping bombs on people. And a lot of people make the argument, well, if you guys weren't bombing the Middle East, they wouldn't be flooding into Europe. Correct. So why are we bombing them? Why are we even in the Middle East? Because of U.S. foreign policy. Well, why does U.S. foreign policy? Why is it? Why is it going to war with all these Middle Eastern countries? Because of the Greater Israel Project. And you see the connections? It's all one system. So if one linchpin falls out, the entire castle crumbles. And that linchpin is Hillary Clinton. So the best way to avoid the election, if she's going to lose, is go to war. But they can't shoot first. They have to get Russia or China or North Korea or somebody else, possibly even shooting down, Assad shooting down, having his guys shoot down a Turkish airplane. Because, trust me, the Israelis look at this, well, no, we'll let them shoot down the Turkish airplane. NATO will go to war with Syria. They'll go in, they'll bomb the shitballs out of the Syrian army under Article 5. We'll stay out of it so Iran doesn't attack us, because as soon as Iran gets nervous, they're like, okay, well, as soon as Syria falls, we're next. They're going to go preemptive, and they're just going to take out Israel. The big card that Iran has right now is, and every time, oh, well, Iran's always threatened to wipe Israel off the map, because Israel keeps threatening to do a preemptive strike on it. And right now, the S-300 missile systems are basically guarding the nuclear facilities that the Israelis want to strike. But it's pointless, because the Israelis are either going to buy the bombs from North Korea. If North Korea is making warheads, they're probably doing it in conjunction with Iranian scientists. Again, why would the Iranians bother to try to do that? I mean, if they get there, fine, but they're like, it's so caustic. It's cheaper just to go buy an old warhead and put it on a missile. They can get these things on the black market for $130,000. They can get this stuff. So anyway, oh my God, I'm running out of time. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at about that. So that's where we're at right now. We'll have to wait to see how all this stuff plays out. But anyway, if you like this kind of content, please consider making donations. The channel is always so much I always miss, because again, can't get it all in one. Too much to follow. If you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation down below. We're at 1,060 some odd bucks now. So thank you guys for stepping up on that. But make your prediction of what you would like to see done with the money. Links down below, or comment down below. Next, that rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourself. Be true to others. Always do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day. G'day, hi, and welcome. Yeah, it's like extreme close up at random times. That's hard. I gotta take out my camera doing it. Hey, dog. Oh, okay, she blinked. She's still alive. She's still good. Still good. She went outside today by herself. Hanging out. All right. Got my list here. Before I get into the thing, again, last night the pregnant lady is no more. She popped. So my friend Samantha Molly had her first little baby girl. So congratulations. I just want to give that shout out. Now that that's out of the way, and congratulations to the grandma and grandpa and the dad and everybody, and the aunt. Aunt Ashley's going to be like Uncle Reggie. He's going to spoil the crap out of the. That'll be fun. So I look forward to that. And anyway, can't always have depressing news. Sometimes you have to talk about the good stuff, because that's the whole point of why you want to change things in the world. So, for the better, of course. But now, after all that nice happy news, let's get back to the doom porn and doom and gloom stuff. Okay, so channel update before I get in. I know I'm always stalling, and I just get to it. Got lots to cover. Stick around. It is going to be worth it. I do like the new format of doing this. It's a little less speculation on my behalf on some stuff, because I don't have time to jam it in there, but at least it gives you the chess pieces, how they're moving around on the board. And obviously, like, there's some of the stuff I'm going to cover in here, you're just going to say, duh, and other stuff you can say, really? Oh, crap. That type of stuff. As far as the channel, quick update, yeah, the YouTube monetizing, I don't know what they're doing now with it. Most of my monetizing is there. But you can't challenge it anymore, where when it would go, so what happens is your video goes under review, and you can't even challenge it. You can't even click the box. And I don't know if it's a computer error on my end or if anybody else is experiencing this. But we do know that depending on what happens in the Congress in the United States, whether Obama is going to be able to hand the internet over to the United Nations, which gives it right to China, Turkey, Russia, and all kinds of Saudi Arabia. These people are going to be able to say, "Oh no, you can't put that out there because that offends us." Once we get to that point, I don't know what's going to happen. That might be the end of the channel. I don't think they're going to do it overnight. I think they're just going to randomly just start taking down channels, and not let channels start up, that type of thing. But till that time, I'm going to ride it out. We'll see where we go. Yeah, it is what it is. Doing more World War III videos kind of offsets the demonetization a bit too. So I guess it's a win-win where it helps me to maintain a bit. So, you know, if I can stay ahead of it at that, the good news is you'll probably get a lot more World War III updates. So that said, we're 3 minutes in, and I know some of you guys have a short attention span, so let's get into this. All right, so we already know about Putin and Erdogan having discussions at the G20 meeting. Nothing is as it appears, because every time you hear about this meeting or that meeting, one side says, oh no, everything went fantastic. The other side says, oh, we didn't negotiate shit. You know what I mean? That type of thing, right? But right now there's a lot of slag on British intervention in Libya and how it's really destroyed Libya. Libya is basically, right now I think their foreign main oil ports are in the hands of the puppet government, which they could pull a fast one. This is why I think there's such, everybody's panties are in a bunch to try to get into Libya right now, because the Libyans could do this. I mean, it's a guaranteed war, but it's not so much that it's a guaranteed war. That's a given because they're already at war. But it's the idea that they'll start sending U.S. treasuries back home, meaning U.S. currency and hyperinflation. If you haven't seen what's going on in Venezuela right now, $150 for a loaf of bread. I remember when I was a kid saying, why was a loaf of bread 10,000 pesos in Mexico? Now, apparently the economy's improved. A lot of people from Mexico have told me, what are you talking about? It's like 250. You know what I mean? Things have improved. But Venezuela is pretty much where Mexico was when I was a kid. Keep in mind, Mexico had a stable currency for 300 years until the Rothschild banking system got in there. So what does that tell you, right? Simon Perez. I'm going to throw this one in there. This guy, I think, was a part of the Balfour Declaration and one of the founders of Israel. He's in a coma at age 94. So this is one of the core Zionists here. I don't know a lot about. I know of him. I don't know a lot about him. But basically, this is one of the guys after World War II, I believe, that got in 1948 Israel as a state. So he's one of them. So he would obviously be working with the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and all that. But apparently this man, what they call the New World Order is really an old world order. Somebody pointed it out, and I think, yeah, that makes more sense because they're all old, they're great. Like David Rockefeller, the guy's like 99, 100 years old, and he's on his deathbed constantly. I mean, these people are going to kick off soon. And that could also make, we see it with Hillary Clinton, how crazy she is. I got to do this before I die, you know what I mean? And they'll take everybody with them. It creates what I call the Moby Dick syndrome, where they're going to go down with the great white whale. You know what I mean? They're going to harpoon that thing, and they're going to take but the problem is they take the dory with it and all the other people that are on the dory, right? So think of the economy like that, going after the great white whale, the Greater Israel Project. A lot of people don't understand. Everything we're seeing now was planned years and years and years ago. I bet you day one of the League of Nations, Maurice Stroud, he kicked off. He was a part of it with the Rockefellers, and then it went into the United Nations. And probably from day one, everything they planned probably back then is what we're seeing now. Because they can't just roll it out that fast. People will just revolt. And people are revolting. Obviously, in Libya, again, some people are legitimate jihadists. There's no doubt about that. There is people that have ideology differences than the West. I'm not saying there is no terrorists. But a lot of these people, too, could be what you would call opposition. Again, in these countries, opposition is usually shot at, not debated with, right? So these are people who want their country back. Hence, they're seizing the oil ports and stuff like that. Now, obviously, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, so Boko Haram, ISIS, etc., etc. But more and more people are catching on to the idea that ISIS is really an Israeli-U.S. creation. It's a Western creation as a proxy army to overthrow Assad, made up of willing participants of jihadists. But if you really look at where the bombings take place and all that, it's more, like I say, it's the biggest cattle rustling event we've seen in history. The idea is to keep the jihadis fighting and corral them back into Syria so they keep fighting to overthrow Assad, which is really, at the end of the day, is a war against Russia and China because Russia and China are invested in there, right? So, and I go over this and I go over this. But anyway, that's just something to know. I can imagine it's probably going to be the same here, but right now, the radiation counts across the United States in some places are like at 348 clicks per minute or whatever. And anything over 50 is considered high. This is radiation from the Fukushima plant. So again, like we've talked about before, radiation is bioaccumulative. It has long-lasting effects. It does break down over time, but not in our lifetime. Maybe in, we're talking, how many generations are we talking here? 100 generations, or whatever. Sorry, 1,000 generations. Is it 1,000 generations before 25,000 years? Obamacare, you might as well call it Obamacare.